Trial of George Zimmerman, gripping and emotional testimony Monday from Trayvon Martin's father, Tracy. The defense arguing that something he said actually bolsters the case for Zimmerman's innocence. ABC's Matt Gutman has that story.
For the first time, Trayvon Martin's grieving father on the stand.
My world has just been turned upside down.
Tracy Martin telling jurors that these pleas for help
Do you think he's yelling help?
heard in the background of this 911 call were his son screaming.
I was listening to my son's last cry for help. I was listening to his life being taken.
Prosecutors never called Martin to the stand, but on Monday, the attorneys defending George Zimmerman did, suggesting Martin had changed his story to help the state's case. After initially telling police the voice he heard was not Trayvon's.
I never said, no, that wasn't my son's voice, and just kind of shook my head and said, I can't tell.
Just moments earlier, lead police investigator Chris Serino said the teen's father had given a very different answer when he first heard the call 2 days after his son was shot by Zimmerman during a scuffle.
He looked away and under his breath, as I interpreted, said no.
Just who was crying for help has become the focus of much of this trial. Prosecutors believe the pleas for help came from 17-year-old Martin. But Zimmerman's lawyers called the parade of their client's friends to the stand Monday to say the voice belonged to him.
I thought it was George.
Yes, definitely. It's Georgie.
Your voice obviously changes. I've heard a 250-pound man, sound like a little girl.
Zimmerman has pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder, claiming Martin attacked him and he shot in self-defense after those screams for help were ignored. Adam Pollock, the man who trained Zimmerman in kickboxing, told jurors his 29-year-old client was not a fighter.
He didn't know how to really effectively punch. He was predominantly fat, not a lot of muscle.
Still, legal analysts aren't convinced that's a justification for Zimmerman pulling the trigger.
He did testify that George Zimmerman was somewhat of a cream puff, but we all know that the cream puff had a gun.
Now this morning, Robin, we expect the focus to shift from those phone calls to forensics. We've learned that a noted pathologist is going to be put on the stand. Now the defense has already put 12 witnesses on the stand so far. They're flying through it. It is possible they could wrap up their case as early as today, which means the jury could get this case as early as at the end of the week. Robin.
We'll see what happens. All right, Matt, thank you. We're going to bring in ABC's Chief Legal Affairs anchor, Dan Abrams. A lot of attention, a lot of emphasis on that 911 call, and we see Tracy Martin, Trayvon's father, so emotional. How will all this play, do you think, with the jury?
So the defense is calling witness after witness to say it was George Zimmerman. Even if this jury isn't sure, that's a win for the defense. That's reasonable doubt. So I think that's all the defense is really trying to do here. Now, calling Tracy Martin was a risky move because, remember, 2 police officers testified that the first time Tracy Martin heard that tape, he did not think it was his son, Trayvon. You could just leave it at that, right? The defense could just say, we've got the police officer's testimony. We don't need to call Tracy Martin. They decided they wanted to call Tracy Martin. So in conjunction with getting an effort to undermine Tracy Martin, you also get the very emotional, powerful side of Tracy Martin, the dad, testifying in effect on behalf of Trayvon.
Exactly. And today we heard in Matt's report, the defense continues, of course, and with a forensic expert. What do you think we're going to hear today?
I think we're going to hear a little bit more both about George Zimmerman's injuries and the gunshot wound. Again, the defense trying to show this was defensive. The defense also wants to recreate, sort of create almost a 3D recreation of exactly how this could have happened. The judge hasn't ruled yet on exactly how much of that she's going to let in. But that's how I think the defense wants to wrap all this up. They want to basically say, this is how we believe it could have occurred.
And as Matt said, they're moving along rather quickly here. All along, you have said this is a tough case for the prosecution, and you still feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, after the prosecution's case, I believe that it's hard to imagine how, based on the evidence that the jurors have seen, they could convict as a legal matter on manslaughter or second-degree murder. But juries are impossible to predict. They make the decisions, and they sometimes choose to go their own way, even if it involves ignoring the law. There are others who say that they wouldn't be ignoring the law, but we shall see.
And again, we've been hearing bits and pieces in the reports, but those jurors have heard every single moment of testimony.
That's right.
We'll see what happens. Could be this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.